it's always important to know if your home or apartment or condo, whatever you live in, is it located on an evacuation zone on an official hurricane map. Okay, so to help people find that information quickly, basically you can look under the storm threatening button on the website, and you'll see there's a table of contents, and on the left you can click on evacuate or not. And I've got some kind of rules of thumb to follow and some questions to ask yourself about your situation and your needs, and about if you should evacuate or not. Well, here's one of the main question that we're really looking at today. It's, do you live in a hurricane evacuation zone that's likely to have a mandatory evacuation at some point in the future? So you can read through this whole thing, but basically on here is a list that I've compiled that I started at the beginning of the hurricane season, so it's pretty up to date. And it is a link to the state and local hurricane evacuation maps. Right, this one has it listed state by state. So I'm going to go down to just use an example, Florida, where I happen to live. So here's a link to the floridadisaster.org. Know your zone. Now, every state and every locality seems to have a slightly different take on how to present this material. Florida is probably a really good example of what works well. So you come down here to know your zone, and if you look in Florida, the disaster zone maps and everything are located by the county level. So some states are at a statewide level, some have very extensive information, and some don't have very good information. But we're going to click on Hillsborough County, which is the Tampa area, and they have a very nice setup here, and one of them is find your evacuation zone. So I'm going to click on this, and this is going to load an interactive map. Now, some localities have a PDF file or some other type of mapping system, but in this case, this map, I'm going to move this around a little bit, but you can see, if you know this area at all, this is Tampa, and here's Tampa Bay. Now notice over in Pinellas County at St. Petersburg, that's not on this map because these are out at the county level. So this map actually shows you where the shelters are that would open up in case there's a storm threat. In this case, all the shelters are closed, and even designate if the shelter is pet friendly. But what we're talking about today is how do you find out if you're in an evacuation zone? So in this case, they've shaded the different levels of evacuation requirements, starting in this kind of pink color and working their way through yellow and into green. And so those red pink areas are zone A. And what happens in a case of a storm is really threatening an area, the officials will decide if they're going to call for mandatory evacuations. So in theory, everyone that lives in this pink area is going to have to evacuate or should evacuate if they say a zone A, level A evacuation. And that has to do with the storm surge threats. So as you can see, if they did all the way to zone E, which is actually this lighter blue area, it's like a huge area of this particular city. So they can call different levels of evacuation. Now, in these zones are literally hundreds of thousands of people's homes and apartments and businesses. And so you can find on a map like this and locate your address. This one happens to have an interactive address search function. Some don't. You just have to kind of find yourself on the map. This map is also nice because it has routes to the different shelters. That would, I guess they would activate public transportation that would zoom through these areas and pick people up on buses. So this is a well thought out mapping system in this particular county and in Florida. So that's basically what you have to find. Again, it's important to, look through these map resources, and we could go to any county in Florida that has evacuation maps, and the other states are similar. But it's very important that you take a look at those and find out way in advance if you are in an evacuation zone or not. Our site is hunkerdown.guide, and we have information on preparing before a storm, when a storm's threatening, and then recovering after a storm.